I always figured the constant fighting between my three sons was just normal. Part of having boys, right? I'd play referee, get angry, send them to their rooms, rinse and repeat. It wasn't until one really awful Tuesday morning, with screaming echoing through the house before 7 a.m., that a horrifying thought hit me. What if I wasn't the referee in this chaos? What if I was the source? If you'd walked into my house a few years ago, the first thing you'd have noticed was the noise, and not the happy, playful noise of a bustling family. No, this was the grating, high-pitched sound of constant conflict. Our home was defined by slammed doors, shouts of "he took my toy," and the endless, exhausting cycle of me trying to manage it all. I have 3 boys, and for the longest time, I just told myself, this is boy-dad life. This is how it is. I felt like I was living in a constant state of reaction. My whole day was just putting out fires. One son would snatch something from another and I'd swoop in, the frustrated judge. 2 of them would start wrestling and it would always end in tears with me as the exasperated executioner, doling out timeouts. It was chaotic. And if I'm being honest, it was miserable. I loved my sons more than anything, but I didn't like our life together. It felt like we were all just surviving, gritting our teeth until bedtime. The sibling rivalry was the worst part. It seemed to crawl into everything. They competed for the last snack, for who got to sit shotgun, for who was best at a video game. But mostly, they competed for my attention. And I, in my frantic attempts to be fair, was actually making things so much worse. I'd listen to one son's side of the story, then the others, trying to find the truth. But all I was teaching them was that tattling and playing the victim were the fastest ways to get dad on their side. I thought the chaos was some outside force I had to control. I thought their rivalry was just part of their personalities. I was wrong. My aha moment wasn't some huge, dramatic event. It was that ordinary, awful Tuesday morning. The fight was over a blue Lego brick, a single, tiny, blue Lego. My oldest, who was 7, wanted it for his spaceship. My middle son, who was 3, had it and wouldn't let go. The screaming started. I was in the kitchen trying to pack lunches, already stressed about being late for work. My patience was gone. I stormed into the living room, my voice already raised. "What is the problem now?" I yelled, snatching the Lego from my 3-year-old's hand. He immediately burst into tears. I spun on my oldest. "You are 7. You should know better than to fight with your little brother." He looked at me, his face a mix of shock and anger, and then he just deflated. His shoulders slumped. He walked away to his room and quietly shut the door. Watching him walk away, I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel like I'd solved anything. I felt like a bully. I looked down at the Lego in my hand. I had reacted purely out of my own stress. I hadn't listened. I hadn't taught. I had just exploded. I'd made my 3-year-old feel powerless and my 7-year-old feel shamed. And it hit me. The problem wasn't the Lego. It wasn't even the fighting. The problem was me. My reaction, driven by my mood, was the unpredictable, frightening variable in their lives. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that something had to change. That morning sent me down a rabbit hole of research and some very hard self-reflection. I discovered the concept of inconsistent parenting. When your parenting is dictated not by your child's needs or by clear rules, but by your own mood. Maybe you felt this. One day you're feeling great, so you're the fun dad. The kids are wrestling and you're laughing with them. The next day, you're stressed and tired, and the exact same wrestling match gets them sent to their rooms. For a child, this is incredibly confusing and creates a deep sense of insecurity. They never know which parent they're going to get. Is it patient, understanding dad or short-tempered, yelling dad? This unpredictability forces them to be anxious, constantly trying to read your emotional state. Studies show that this kind of mood-based parenting can lead to long-term mental health challenges for children because it completely undermines their sense of a secure world. This was me. My kids were walking on eggshells around my moods. And this is where sibling rivalry gets supercharged. When the rules are always changing based on how dad feels, kids learn the system is random. They don't learn about fairness, they learn about power. The fight stops being about the toy and becomes about winning the parent over. It becomes a competition for favor. Who can look like the victim? Who can make their brother look worse? They were competing because I had created a system where my attention felt conditional and scarce. As one dad regretfully put it, he was sometimes the fun dad and sometimes the strict dad, all based on his own feelings, not his kids' needs. This is a common regret among fathers. We fall into the trap of matching their emotional level, yelling when they yell instead of modeling maturity. This destroys your authority and, more importantly, your child's trust. Realizing you're the problem is a tough pill to swallow. But the good news is, if you're the problem, you're also the solution. I knew I couldn't just try to be more patient. I needed concrete, real-world strategies. So I focused on 3 big changes. First, I had to establish absolute consistency. Kids thrive on predictability. They need to know the rules and trust that those rules will be the same today as they were yesterday, no matter how my day at work went. My wife and I sat down and made a short, clear list of non-negotiable family rules. Simple things like we use kind words and we keep our hands to ourselves. Then we established clear, logical, and consistent consequences, not punishments. If you hit your brother, you lose the privilege of playing together for 15 minutes. Every single time, no exceptions. It took the emotion out of it. I was no longer the angry judge. I was just enforcing a rule they already knew. Second, I started to schedule individual connection. I read about common regrets fathers have, and a big one was not spending enough dedicated one-on-one time with each child. In a house with 3 boys, the pack dynamic takes over. The loudest kid gets the attention. I realized I was just managing the group, not truly connecting with each son as an individual. This breeds rivalry because they feel they have to fight for a scrap of my attention. So I made it a non-negotiable part of our schedule. Every week, each boy gets a dad date. It's nothing fancy. A walk to the park, a trip to the shops, or just 20 minutes of building Legos, just the 2 of us. This changed everything. It sent a clear message. You don't have to compete for my love. There's an infinite supply, and there is a time that is just for you. And the third, and maybe the hardest change, was to practice the pause and choose my words. My default reaction was to yell, a habit born from my own stress. But research in my own life showed me that yelling just creates fear and makes kids more aggressive. So I made a personal rule, the 10-second pause. When I felt that surge of anger, I would literally stop, take a deep breath, and count to 10 before I did anything. In that pause, I'd ask myself, what do they need to learn right now? Instead of, how do I make this stop? This shifted me from reacting to teaching. Instead of stop fighting, I started saying things like, I see 3 boys who all want the same thing. How can we solve this together? It meant validating their feelings before addressing their behavior. It wasn't easy, and I wasn't perfect, but every time I did it, I was modeling the self-control I wanted them to learn. The change wasn't overnight. The first few weeks of being ruthlessly consistent were tough. The kids tested the new boundaries constantly, but slowly, something amazing started to happen. The noise in our house began to change. The screaming and tattling dropped dramatically. Why? Because it didn't work anymore. Tattling didn't get them anywhere because the consequence was tied to the action, not to who was right. The biggest change was in their relationship with each other because they were getting their individual needs for connection met during our dad dates. They didn't have to fight for my attention anymore. They started playing together, they started helping each other. One afternoon, I walked by the playroom and saw my oldest son showing my youngest how to build part of his spaceship. No prompting from me, no fighting, just a quiet moment of cooperation. It was so beautiful, it almost made me cry. Our home isn't perfect now. They're still brothers. They still argue. But the foundation has shifted from insecurity to security. The chaos has been replaced by a general sense of calm. I'm no longer just a stressed out referee. I'm their dad, their predictable, consistent, and supportive dad. My journey started with that horrifying realization on a Tuesday morning. My attempts to control the chaos were actually creating it. My inconsistent, mood-based parenting was fueling my son's rivalry. It's a hard thing to admit you're the problem, but it's also incredibly empowering because it means you hold the solution. By shifting from emotional reactions to consistent rules, from group management to individual connection, and from yelling to teaching, I was able to transform our home. It wasn't about becoming a perfect parent. There's no such thing. It was about becoming a predictable one. It was about learning that my children's sense of safety was more important than my own fleeting frustration. My journey is far from over. I still have to practice that pause. I still have to be intentional. But now, when I look at my sons, I don't see a problem to be managed. I see three incredible, unique individuals, and I have the profound privilege of being their father. If any of this resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it. What was your aha moment in parenting? That instant where you knew something had to change? Please share your story in the comments. Your vulnerability could be the turning point for another parent who feels just as lost as I did. Thank you for listening.